Hi. Detective Wilson, come right on over here. Put your hands behind your back right here.
Newly released body cam video of an arrest of a doctor whose sick crimes are no longer a secret.
The defendant recorded her while using the bathroom. He assaulted her while she was asleep in her own bed in her own home. And then he kept trophies.
This story is hard to fathom as you look at video from the doctor's sentencing per WXYZ. Some victims in this case are adults. Some are as young as toddlers.
Stop looking at the ground, you coward.
What one of the victims said to that doctor's face in court and how he responded. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. I'll be honest with you, I needed to take a break after reading through the 279-page case file in connection to a sick doctor out of Michigan. A break not just because it was a lot of reading, but because this story is just so sick. This is a man who recorded children as they changed, and he sexually abused unconscious patients at a hospital. This is body cam video that we just received out of Oakland County, Michigan, of police approaching the home of Dr. Oumair Aejaz. Now you can see this is a really nice house, has a basketball hoop outside, and officers see a child in the driveway. They have redacted that child and what the child says back to the officers.
Hello? Policemen are here.
Now in a moment, that child's dad will come out. Frankly, he is a monster who will be taken from this home. Now, bear with us as we go through this because there are moments where the audio and video have been taken out. This is a heavily redacted piece of video. And when I explain the details of this story, and I will warn you they are graphic, you will understand why police are being so delicate.
Hello. How you doing, sir? Step right over here for me, will you? Hi. Detective Wilson, come right on over here. Put your hands behind your back right here. Okay. We're here for a case that involves you, and so we're going to take you where we need to go to resolve it, okay?
That is Dr. Oumair Aejaz, and he is also a husband and a father to 2 young boys. Police take him into custody after they say his wife came to them after discovering disturbing material. Now, here is what police say they found when they did a search warrant on several electronic devices in the doctor's home. This is per WDIV.
The allegations were that he was engaged in activity, including but not limited to placing hidden cameras in changing rooms, video recording young children as young as 2 years of age, and all the way up to grown adults in different settings. The current criminal charges, which the prosecutor will speak to, are primarily from activities conducted in Rochester and Rochester Hills when he was off duty, where he appears to utilize cameras that were deployed separate from himself and then also on his person. They were used in changing rooms, bathrooms, hospital rooms, as well as inside closets, bathrooms, and bedrooms of residents that he had access to. We believe the criminal activity has been going back at least 6 years, but this is, and I can't stress this enough, so much the tip of the iceberg.
Now, again, I went through the nearly 300-page case report on this, and there are so many details that are just so graphic, I can't say them here. Police allege that this doctor secretly taped conscious and even unconscious female patients at places where he worked. And even worse, they say he videotaped himself sexually assaulting unconscious female patients. Police say a search warrant uncovered 6 computers, 4 cell phones, and 15 hard drives. On top of that, just one of those hard drives reportedly contained more than 13,000 videos. Now, at the time of the doctor's arrest, investigators said it could take them months to review all the evidence they seized.
It's not just children. It's not just women. It's not just men. It goes from a 2-year-old to a grown woman. And so the victimization is so broad and the perversion so great that we're just beginning to wrap our arms around it. And disturbing on so many levels that it's hard to look at the videos of that activity where a woman is basically unconscious in a hospital bed and he's violating her, to a 2-year-old thinking they're out for a great swim day and they're being captured naked. There's nobody that's out of bounds for this sick activity.
Police say they discovered a video from a changing room at a children's swim school. As investigators reviewed the seized files, they found a folder that was labeled Swim, and that folder contained a subfolder that was titled Swim Cut. And inside that folder, they say there were dozens of videos showing children changing inside the facility. Police claim the doctor would go into a stall in the changing room and then, quote, look over or beneath the wall into an adjacent stall and videotape or photograph the women and children. Now, I want you to imagine this moment if it was you, if it was your children, because police say when they told victims what happened and that they had videos of these victims, they felt disgusted, they felt shocked, and as you can imagine, they felt incredibly violated. One woman, according to the case file, quote, she had no idea she had ever been videotaped by anyone, was uncertain when this may have happened, and she would never consent to such activity. And you will hear from the mother of a child who is videotaped in just a moment, and she does not hold back in the final moments before this doctor is taken away potentially for the rest of his life. Now, initially, the doctor was held on 10 charges, but that was just the beginning.
For the video that you mentioned of the woman unconscious in her hospital bed, was he there as a doctor or somebody visiting, or are you not sure at this point?
Yeah, she was mentioned that there's more than one, unfortunately, woman that appears to be in that situation, whether that was an individual he had been charged with any kind of medical care of, or he just accessed that room on his own, or if he went there on his own time because he had credentials. All of that's part of the investigation.
The doctor was arrested in August of 2024, and at that time, police said that they believed that his criminal activity went back roughly 6 years. In December of 2025, he was sentenced after he pleaded no contest to 31 counts of sexual misconduct. And at his sentencing, the mom of a young boy who he recorded at that swim school faced him, and she had this to say. This is per Detroit TV station WXYZ.
MLF_CLD_SWM_VID. MILF, meaning mother, I'd like to child. CLD, meaning child, as in my then 2-year-old son. SWM, as in we were in a changing room at Goldfish Swim School after my son's swim class. VID, meaning not just a picture, but a whole video that this waste of space on Earth kept categorized on his hard drives to go back and watch as many times as he wanted. Well, he off and got from watching myself and my 2-year-old son change in a changing room. So stop looking at the ground, you coward. Look up and look me in the eye as I address you, because you had that audacity when you decided to wander into Goldfish Swim School, turn on a camera, place it upwards looking into that 2-foot space that was at the bottom of those changing rooms, and then sit there for God knows how long just recording the moms, parents, dads, aunts, uncles, grandmas, and their kids as their kids were literally changing out of their wet swimsuits. So look at me when I speak to you. If you have any kind of that courage or that sense of being the greatest thing that's ever happened and that you will never get caught and you will never do any wrong. Or you can stare at the ground and twiddle your thumbs because you know that you're done. So I hope you enjoyed whatever it was that made you get to kids changing in a changing room. Because I will do everything in my power, and you off the wrong mom. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that the only thing you'll ever get to see again outside of your memory of all of these sick, nasty videos, pictures, and whatever else you had are the memory of the men you're now stuck in prison with. I hope you are treated by those men as an object, like you chose to regard my son and I and the other women that were brave enough to stand up here and tell this judge how awful you have made their lives. And these people were just working, and I was just there with my son. And to all the other parents and the other employees who did not feel like they were safe enough to come stand in the same room as you. You are a waste of the air that I breathe, an absolute embarrassment to anyone and everyone who had the displeasure of knowing you. It's sad that you couldn't just walk up to a woman and ask for a nudie pic. Rather, you're such a creepy weirdo that you had to buy cameras to get pictures and videos of beautiful women and their amazing children. The lack of confidence you have, I'm not shocked about. I wouldn't even think twice about swiping left on the sorry, sad excuse of a man you are. But don't worry, your buddies in prison will make sure that you're reminded of how pathetic you are every time they see you crawling around, because standing up will be too painful. And if you ever end up in that infirmary that they have in prison, I pray that those nurses and doctors treat you at the same way that you did to your patients, or really vulnerable, drugged up ragdolls that you assaulted or took videos or pictures of, rather than giving them actual medical care as a doctor that you took the oath to take care of. And I get upset about that because I'm a medical provider as well, and it is disgusting that any medical provider had the audacity to do that to people who were just trying to feel better and get better. Of course, these medical professionals, they won't assault you or take nasty, vile pictures of you because you know they took an oath that I bet they have the integrity to uphold, unlike yourself. So I hope that they give you the care that you deserve. When you get taken there for your injuries, you know, the ones that make you feel like a worthless, helpless human being, like I felt like for a year now, that you in fact did not ask for, were just brought upon you without your consent. Yes, those injuries, I hope they pretend like they gave you some meds, but let you just sit there in pain, because you absolutely deserve that. Apparently, at least 800 plus times over from the stats that I've read in the news, that I'm traumatized by every single time I see your face in the news or something about you in the news regarding anything to do with any of this. The day I had to identify myself, Your Honor, and my son was the hardest day of my entire life. The evening prior, while at work at a high school, as a high school athletic trainer in Rochester Community Schools, in the community where the Goldfish Swim School resides, I got the call from Sergeant Allen telling me that they think they have identified me in one of the videos that was taken of my son and I at Goldfish Swim School. In the middle of a varsity basketball game, I collapsed in the hallway, and my school resource officer, who I had never actually gotten to speak to yet because he was new, had to help me get back on my feet and help me take just a few minutes and then pull my together to get back in and do the job that I promised to do for my student athletes, which is just to keep them healthy and safe. I think this moment was the worst of all because I felt completely alone, and that although I keep other people's kids safe, I realized that in that moment that I could not keep my own son safe from an evil, sadistic, narcissistic pedophile like this guy. Because I knew in my gut that I was going to be positively identifying myself the next day. And those were 12 hours of absolute hell. After identifying myself, my world spun out of control. I was seeing black, not red, but black, because the rage and anger that I was feeling was something that I had never felt in my entire life. Over the next few weeks, I was having nightmares that would wake me up with me screaming and sweating uncontrollably I started to have panic attacks randomly throughout the day. I couldn't go to stores, and I was only doing online shopping for things like groceries because I was afraid that every person that looked at me might have had a camera. I couldn't go into changing rooms. I couldn't even change at work into game day clothes from just practice and taping clothes, or from just regular clothes into even warm clothes outside for spring sports. I was spending all hours trying to find somewhere that I felt safe to change in my school. In the women's coach's office, in a locker room, there are 2 doors that would usually close me off from every other person while I change. I was so comfortable there, I even pumped while I was breastfeeding. And now this was somewhere that was not my own bathroom. It was not my own home or my locked bedroom in my own home with the door shut and locked, even though I was just there with my husband and my son. I was paranoid and I was anxious, and working with my patients became extremely difficult and almost impossible. To give my student athletes, who are my patients, the very best care that I had given for so many years. I would call into work all the time because driving there made me nervous, and I was worried that I would run into a parent of Indian or Middle Eastern descent, which is many parents and many doctors and medical professionals that I work with daily. They are of that descent. I was worried that every time I saw them, they were going to have a camera recording me, which I know is completely irrational, but my brain could not turn off. The immediate fear that I felt when I would see any person with those racial backgrounds walking through my school, or even in the stands at games where I had to be for work, or even if they were coming to speak to me about one of their own children, or the doctors with my students under their care, everything was terrifying. Every single time. I was diagnosed with acute post-traumatic stress disorder and severe anxiety. I began seeing a assault specialized therapist. I was put on numerous medications to help me just get through the day and to get me through the workday, and just try multiple medications to help me sleep for more than an hour or 2 at night. So I was somewhat able to take care of my toddler, the toddler that he recorded in the changing room, in the morning when I would wake up with him at 6 a.m. Due to the lack of sleep and just pure panic 100% of the time, my family life was affected greatly. My incredible husband was by my side and supportive every time, but my son, who didn't know any better, was affected so much that he started to have changes in his behavior and started to have small panic attacks that would show up with extreme anxiety when I would start crying. Every time I cried, my son cried, and then he would have a panic attack and a meltdown. Usually this is normal for a 4-year-old, but it would only happen when I'd be sitting on the floor sobbing, because all of a sudden I would start panicking and be worried that somebody was looking in my house windows. My toddler, he has no idea what's going on. And I'll do everything in my power to protect him from all of this until he's at the age where he can just kind of understand the magnitude and the severity of all this and horrible, evil things that this guy did. And unfortunately, my son had to be involved, and so did I. But the reason that I'm here today, and the reason why I'm making sure that someone is here to speak for the other parents that were affected and the other kids that were affected, they either did not want to identify themselves in those videos or were unable to put into words what they're feeling about this horrific situation. I'm here representing them today. The day that I have to talk to my son about this, I want my son to know that I did everything I could to fight for justice and make sure that this guy, this absolute waste of space and the waste of the air that I breathe, goes to prison for the rest of his life, and he gets the treatment that he deserves every single day that he's there. I'm here to make sure that my student athletes, who I always preach to about trust, openness, and prioritizing mental health, or anything else that's on their mind, can see that their athletic trainer be vulnerable, confident, and be willing to put everything on the line, including possibly how others see me, both personally and professionally. I'm here to make sure that the vulnerable people affected in any part of this case from what this guy did know that they are not alone and they're not a victim. They're just unfortunately involved in this horrible situation. And although I know it will be hard for all of us to process this and to be able to function at all like we did before the days of all of this starting. This is hard because every person involved didn't even know that they were involved until they had to identify themselves in these videos and pictures. On the extensive network of hard drives and other devices that all of our images were meticulously categorized and stored on. To my family, thank you for helping me work through this, even on the hardest days when I know that being around me was possibly unbearable. Thank you for helping me keep this about as quiet as possible while I worked through it, because I was so embarrassed and I didn't even know how I was supposed to tell people that I was involved in this because I was trying to process it myself. So, Your Honor, this man is never going to change. Unfortunately, he could care less that what any of us have to say here today, because he really thought that he would never get caught. He did these horrible, horrible things for years and years and thought that he was going to live forever on the outside with pictures and videos of unknowing and unconsenting adults, and most importantly, children that can't even comprehend the enormity of the consequences of this guy's actions. I hope that you give him the absolute maximum sentence on every single count that he is convicted of. With that, I'm sure what happened to him when he was a kid that fucked him up bad enough that he even had these urges to take these videos and pictures, from a clinical medical professional standpoint, and someone who extensively works with the DSM-5, the diagnostic tool to understand and diagnose mental health disorder, this guy will never change. He will never do anything different if he is given the chance to be free. He will never not be a sneaky, creepy predator of the most vulnerable people in the world. He will never be able to control his urges if given access to any kind of electronic devices ever for the rest of his life. If he's given anything less than a maximum sentences for every single count, it will be an extreme injustice to those of us who have to sit here and deal with this nightmare over and over the past couple of years. What he did will affect every single one of us for the rest of our lives. He deserves to feel that pain every single day while he rots in prison until the day that he dies.
Now you can see the doctor, who prosecutors say preyed on his victims and violated their rights in such a deeply and disturbing way, just stood there. He looked down, couldn't even look his victims in the eyes as they addressed him in court. And on top of that, he didn't have the guts to say anything in court either. He just quietly stared down and declined when the judge gave him the opportunity to speak. This is what prosecutors had requested.
Counts 1 and 12 in that case carry a mandatory minimum sentence of 25 years each. And as we noted in the People's Sentencing Memo, counts 1 through 4 and counts 12 through 15 are eligible for consecutive sentencing at the court's discretion. Now, we are asking the court to abide by its Cobb's agreement with the defense to abstain from consecutive sentencing in that case as well. However, this is not a case in which a minimum of any kind would be appropriate. The defendant's conduct was not minimal by any measure. And although this case, the FC case, involved just a single identified victim, she was a child, 7 years old, and the defendant's acts against her were repetitive and obsessive in their nature. The defendant recorded her while using the bathroom. He assaulted her while she was asleep in her own bed, in her own home, and then he kept trophies by recording those acts. The defendant is an abuser and a predator. Again, he assaulted a child just 7 years of age in her own home while she was asleep, and he did this multiple times while he was a guest and a trusted adult in her life. And then he kept trophies of his abuse by recording the acts on video. So he's not only a predator, but he's a thief, because he's stolen these people's innocence, their privacy, and obviously their peace of mind. His conduct is far beyond the factors taken into account by both statutory language and by the sentencing guidelines. And his conduct across Oakland County and beyond is so severe and so indicative of almost a pathological need to record and abuse defenseless people that a sentence above the minimum is not only appropriate but necessary. As we stated in the People's Sentencing Memorandum, justice requires a higher sentence.
Now, this is what the judge had to say to this disturbing and sick human being who was a doctor.
I do want to indicate to you that this has been one of the more deplorable cases that I've had before me. The extent of your conduct, your criminal conduct, is just beyond words. I agree with everything that has been said by the victims and by the prosecution. You are a predator, you are a narcissist, and you are a sadist. That is quite clear, just reading this report. And I didn't even have the benefit of actually viewing the videos. So I can't comprehend how someone, a medical doctor, would do the things that you have done. And I can certainly understand the victim's situation in that they don't know who to trust anymore. If you can't trust someone who is supposed to be a helper, who can you trust? And what is even more disgusting in this case, sir, is that you did this with your own family. You did this with your own family. The child that you have been convicted of abusing was your brother's daughter. How low can anyone go? Not to mention patience. It's incomprehensible to me that there is a human being that could stoop to this level of conduct, sir. And you are not deserving of any title or any recognition. You have damaged so many lives, hurt so many people, and all I can do is put you in prison, sir. And I wish I could do more, but I can't. All right then, as it relates to the case ending in 2876FH. One count of child sexually abusive activity. This court is sentencing you to 12 to 20 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections. With respect to count 2, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 12 to 20 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention 481 days of credit on both of those charges. With respect to count 3, capturing, distributing an image of unclothed person, this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 4, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 5, capturing, distributing an image of unclothed person, this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 6, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 7, capturing, distributing an image of unclothed person, this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 8, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 9, capturing, distributing an image of unclothed person, this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 10, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of jail credit. With respect to count 11, capturing, distributing image of unclothed person, this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 12, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 13, capturing, distributing image of unclothed person, this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to count 14, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 481 days of credit. With respect to case ending in 3405 FC, one count of criminal sexual conduct in the first degree, this court is sentencing you to 35 to 60 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 2, criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 3, child sexually abusive activity, aggravated, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 25 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 4, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 20 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 5, capturing, distributing image of unclothed person, that this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 6, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 7, capturing, distributing image of unclothed person, this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 8, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 9, criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 10, child sexually abusive activity, aggravated, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 25 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 11, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 20 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 12, criminal sexual conduct in the first degree, this court is sentencing you to 35 to 60 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 13, criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 14, child sexually abusive activity, aggravated, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 25 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 15, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 10 to 25 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 16, capturing, distributing image of unclothed person, this court is sentencing you to 3 to 5 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of credit. With respect to count 17, computers using to commit a crime, this court is sentencing you to 4 to 7 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections with 419 days of jail credit. All counts in case ending in 2876FH are concurrent to each other. All counts in case ending in 3405FC are concurrent to each other, and each docket is concurrent to one another. You are to pay state costs of $952 in case ending in 2876FH and $1,156 in case ending in 340FC. And you were to pay the Crime Victims' Rights Fund $130 on each case. And the court has gone above the guidelines because the court feels that this individual is a predator beyond all belief, and this court feels that he would never amend his ways even after serving time with the Michigan Department of Corrections.
At the time of his sentencing, the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office said the investigation remains ongoing into other possible assaults that this doctor could be responsible for, and more charges are possible in other jurisdictions. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law & Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we are also now streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.